What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about a pretty interesting story. Now, this is an analyst. This is a person that I think is speculating. I mean, that's, I think, the general point to it. But, because you're an analyst, you're supposed to, have some sort of backing, some sort of, thing to stand on. Not like digging at the person, but to just say, to start off this video by saying, this is not even a rumor. This is somebody within the industry that thinks something is going to happen. But I think it makes for good conversation because we've actually talked about a lot of this stuff before. So this happened earlier today. It caught my eye on Twitter, and let's just read out what it says. So again, this is from an analyst. David Zaslav is absolutely right in seeing the opportunities. Jefferies analyst Andrew said, the pushback I have is a Game of Thrones game. You'll get that game in 2027 or 2028. Is Game of Thrones still relevant at that point? Making games is more magic than making movies. Gaming might not do much for their stock price as investors move in and out. Nevertheless, analysts have speculated that given its past success and need for growth, WB could buy another gaming company such as EA or Take-Two Interactive. Lightshed has predicted WB would buy a mid-sized publisher, naming Embracer Group and Krafton among other options to get more out of its IP. Haddad wouldn't directly comment on the M&A chatter, but acknowledged that buying studios has been a key to WB's growth. So again, pretty interesting. Now, it's analysts, it's firms, kind of predicting this stuff. And we've had firms kind of predicting that, like, hey, Square Enix will be bought, right? That 2024 and 2025, Sony's going to make a move to combat Microsoft. And it doesn't take a genius. A lot of these, again, analysts, they say really what the common man already kind of speculates or talks about. But again, they have that tagline. But these are things that make a lot of sense. And, it goes back to the age-old conversation we've had. And you could look at this, I got Batman behind me over here, but even Hogwarts Legacy, right? The Wizarding World or Harry Potter. We talk about all the time with both of these properties and franchises. You need more. And you have Star Wars and Marvel kind of putting you to shame for many years at this point. Now, not necessarily, look, the Arkham games are legendary, and you could argue the Arkham games are do you want to say, are they better than any Marvel product? But it's not so much about comparison in this way, actually, about quality. It's actually more in this sense about quantity. The opportunity to make more money, the opportunity to get more of these things out there. Even that first paragraph, that rings true. Now, I think Game of Thrones will actually still be around in 3, 4, 5 years, but I think the point is, if you have something now, waiting 4, 5, 6 years, it's always gonna be a risk. You say Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman, even like Gal Gadot, and in the movie, you look at that and, obviously a lot of things have broken down. But if you start something, say, right now for like The Batman, well, by the time it comes out 5, 6 years from now, the movies, the movies are probably done. So the strategy there is really tough. And I'll tell you what's even harder, okay? What's the toughest part? It's when you have almost no studios doing it. And that's always been the problem, right? Now, I guess where we've predicted and what we've talked about on this channel versus what, this article is talking about is, well, I've always said, do partnerships. You look at Star Wars, you look at Marvel, and what have they done? Pitches everywhere, right? Not like literal pitches, but, you could pitch us the game, and I mean, if we think there's a match there, we're going to do it. And we've seen that. Not all of them are successes. Some of them don't work. Some of them actually are, I think, really good games, say like Marvel's Midnight Suns, that's what I'm thinking of, and it doesn't even commercially do all that well, right? All different things are going to happen, when you open it up. But what it ultimately leads to, in my world, I guess, is just more games, which I get very excited about. And you don't have that right now for DC. You're relying on Rocksteady, WB Montreal, which up until, even still right now, they released Origins and they released Gotham Knights within like a 8-9 year window. And yes, now they're working on 2 games. The Gotham Knights team is working on one. They made 2 studios, so they had one already has been kind of worked on, right? So these studios are getting bigger. These studios are getting split. You've made Monolith now basically a DC team instead of, doing Middle-earth games. Now you got them doing Wonder Woman. You had Avalanche. They were doing, well, very different kind of things than Hogwarts Legacy, right? And you pivoted and you had them do it. So there's already been some good moves. You've already kind of had to adjust some of your studios into what you kind of need them to be. And again, what we've always talked about is, okay, well, go out there. Like, I'm sure if one of your own studios can't work on a Superman game, I am positive if you open the the door to pitches across the industry, can you find a studio that would be a fit, that you work on some sort of contract, that they make that game, you have the licensing agreement, whatever, and you could have that fit there. Is that possible? Absolutely. I am positive there's a studio on planet Earth that you can find and trust with the Superman license to make that game if you don't want to have your own studios do it. And that's just one example. You want a Green Lantern game, you want a Green Arrow game, we can keep saying green things, but anything, right? DC or Wizarding World, what I've talked about leading into Hogwarts Legacy, okay, you need more than one. It cannot just be Avalanche making Hogwarts Legacy 1, 2, 3, takes 4 or 5 years. Now, I'm not saying to rush it, but what if you have like 3 or 4 different studios working on 3 or 4 different Wizarding World games? This is how you make money, by the way. I mean, look, I'm not going to say it's as easy as like hitting a key, on your keyboard. It's not. But again, these analysts are basically saying what we've been saying for a long time. Basically, you need more. Whether you're going to work on like third-party agreements where you're not going to own the studio, but you'll license out your properties and they'll make a game for you. That's what we've talked about. What this is talking about is, well, what if WB actually goes out there and just buys it? Now, let me say something. To suggest that WB might go out and buy Take-Two, I think that makes me laugh. I just absolutely can't even imagine. I can't even imagine it happening. And then I like that kind of right after that, right? So you throw out a big name like Take-Two, and then right after they say, well, maybe more like middle tier, right? Embracer. Not quality-wise, size-wise. Embracer is massive. Embracer would be, I think, heavily discounted right now because they don't know what they're doing. They've shut down dozens of studios. They've slashed dozens more studios. So I think you could get them on a real discounted price right now. And you know what? Look at all that labor. There's so many people still that work at Embracer Group. Do you know how many DC and Wizarding World games you can make? Some of that's kidding, right? But I mean, I think that makes sense. And, WB, from what I understand, at least reading all these news stories on Twitter, which you could say is skewed a little bit, they don't seem like they have a lot of money to me, right? Like there's all those reports of movies being delayed because they literally didn't have marketing budgets for them, so they had to space it out. And obviously you cancel a couple movies that make people really mad, right? Like, no, I'm not going to pretend to be like an expert, but from everything that I've seen, it always has looked like the past few years like they don't have money. To buy a Take-Two, I mean, you need many, many billions of dollars. Even to buy Embracer Group, you would need a good chunk of change. Are they willing to drop 5, 10, 15, 20 billion dollars on something? And if you drop like $10 billion, you're not getting the biggest of the, I don't even think you can buy like a Ubisoft or Square. Maybe. I haven't looked at the numbers actually in a little bit, but I know like the Take-Twos of the world, that's more in like the 20, 30, 40 range, right? So I don't know who they could get, but I think the general idea is you need more studios. Now, do I recommend going out and spending $10 billion to get more studios? I think it would personally be easier to kind of just rent it out. I think that's cheaper. I mean, again, I'm not in the industry. I don't actually know that, but I feel like you wouldn't have to drop $10 billion to open your doors and say, hey, anybody want to make a Wizarding World game? You pitch it to us. We'll allow it. We're going to work on a contract. We're going to make some money. You're going to make some money, and we're all going to be good. Is that not less than $10 billion? I don't know. Maybe it's not less than $10 billion, but I thought, like I said, I thought this would be a pretty good discussion. And hey, who knows? We talk about Microsoft, Sony. I mean, they're going to keep doing it. Tencent, there's going to be these big organizations that gobble everything up, in the next 5-10 years. There's maybe going to be 5 to 10 publishers left. And I think WB can be part of that. But, even a few years ago, there was all this talk of NetherRealm, selling off NetherRealm, selling off Rocksteady. Remember the rumors of specifically those two, Microsoft or Xbox, right? The rumor maybe back in 2020 around, COVID time is Microsoft looking to buy Rocksteady and NetherRealm like in a package deal, right? But remember, like, if you buy the studios from WB, you don't buy the licenses. So if you bought, say, Rocksteady, you don't get DC with it. You literally get the workforce of Rocksteady, and then you'd still have to go to WB to get the properties. So I assume that's why they didn't sell even back 2, 3, 4 years ago when the rumors, said they were looking at it. Maybe that's why, because you're just buying the talent, which, I mean, that is very important, and that's maybe the most important, to just get really skilled people. But, if you're buying a studio, maybe you want the properties and the franchises they've worked on to go along with them. At NetherRealm, do they own Mortal Kombat? I think they do. You can correct me if I'm wrong, though. So I don't know. If you got NetherRealm, I don't think you would get like Injustice, but maybe you get Mortal Kombat with them. I'm not sure. I'm going off the deep end here, but interesting story. We'll see if WB actually does anything with DC or the Wizarding World. I hope we get more than one game, every 4 years. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.